Good morning, everybody. I'm in the old cemetery in my town center, Douglas, Mass. Our town was founded in 1747, and in our cemetery are 46 veterans of the Revolutionary War, some of whom are behind me. And that's fitting for our history snapshot today because it was on this date in 1781, October 19, that the siege at Yorktown ended, which basically ended the Revolutionary War. So here's the Rock of Gibraltar. This was taken from the Spanish by the British in the mid-1700s, and the Spanish wanted it back. Now here's a map of the various possessions the Europeans had in the Caribbean. So the Spanish allied with the French, hoping they could get Gibraltar back, and the Spanish agreed to keep an eye on British possessions in the Caribbean, especially Jamaica. So the British are in New York, here they are, they're here for the whole war, but their fleet is somewhat in North America, but somewhat in the Caribbean. And this is going to be part of the story. So here's George Washington. George was outside of New York City, keeping an eye on the Brits. He had lots to worry about. The colonial money was no good. There was a lot of dissatisfaction among the people as well as the soldiers. So something dramatic needed to happen. Now here's South Carolina and Georgia. The British were strong here, particularly Savannah and Charleston, and Washington decided to send Lafayette down to Richmond, Virginia. So here's Lafayette, and his assignment was to kind of harass the British if he could, particularly General Cornwallis, who was down in Virginia with the British Army. So here's the map showing you Richmond compared to Norfolk. Yorktown is close to Norfolk. So the Americans and the British were sort of back and forth in Virginia, fighting, keeping an eye on each other. Now here's Henry Clinton. He's the head of the British Army in North America, and he and Cornwallis disagreed on strategy. And one thing Clinton had Cornwallis do was fortify Yorktown. So this map has a black line that connects Yorktown at the bottom to Newport, Rhode Island in the top, where the French fleet was. So the French decided to step up their game. One thing led to another, and the French fleet defeated the British fleet at what's known as the Battle of the Chesapeake. And this enables the French to blockade Yorktown when the time comes. And this is a big reason why the Americans were able to win. So here's a map of Yorktown under siege. Washington and the French are to the left. The British is to the far right, and the French Navy is keeping the British from resupplying Yorktown. So over time, the Brits were running out of supplies. Here's another map of the area, and they were just hanging on by their fingernails because they couldn't get resupplied. One of the more dramatic moments in the battle at Yorktown was when Alexander Hamilton led a group of soldiers to attack part of the British lines, pictured here, and this made Hamilton a war hero. And he always wanted to be a war hero, so this helped his career. Well, eventually, on this date, the war did end. Cornwallis did surrender to Washington in 1781. Not quite sure if they played Yankee Doodle. That's one of the stories, but historians disagree about that. Cornwallis went back to England. He became a politician. He ended up going to India to be the governor, and he died in India and is buried in India. And here's his grave maintained by the Indian government. At Yorktown itself is this Victory Monument. Some of you have seen it. Lots of inscriptions at the bottom. And there are also memorials to the French. This is to General Rochambeau, whose troops were with Washington. There are others to de Grasse, the French admiral who had the French Navy stop the British. And there's a monument to the friendship between the Americans and the French. You might note the name of Louis XVI on this monument. He dies during the French Revolution. So here's a map again of the region: Richmond, Norfolk, Yorktown, Jamestown, Williamsburg. Great place to study American history.